all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today is a comedian, producer, CEO, and founder. Being a complete tech and branding nerd, she has created and curated her own comedy tours for nearly 6 years, partnering with brands and creating integrated brand relationships for tour partnerships, leading her to yearly solo, sold-out shows in unique places, such as St. Croix Island, and a tour across Scotland, England, Germany, Czech Republic, France, Spain, and Italy in 2019. After working with one of her former tour partners at TechCrunch in San Francisco in October of 2019, she decided to turn her love for straddling the tech meets documentative entertainment line and began working on her startup, shortly following her 9-year split from her fiance. She is the founder of NPH Comedy, My Breakup Registry, and she's my personal concierge at Glovebox. Please welcome my newest friend and colleague, Natasha Pearl Hansen. Welcome.
Yay! Hi! Thanks for having me. Oh my goodness, I'm excited to be here. I wish I could be in studio with you in New York.
I wish you could be here too, but I make this exception for guests that are like yourself that have such a background to where it's like, I don't care where you are in the world, I gotta have you on the show.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and it was funny because I saw my alert go off this morning because I knew we were recording, but it said New York in the thing, and I was like, God, I hope he doesn't think that I'm showing up to New York today.
I'm not gonna lie.
I was like, I would have loved to.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of had this like little hope. I was like, man, imagine if she was like playing at the Comedy Cellar tonight, doing a show at the Comedy Cellar tonight. And she was just like, hey, Michael, I'm actually in Poughkeepsie, so I'm going to be in studio. That would be so awesome. But I'm sure we'll have that day. You're only my second guest that I've actually pulled their bio from their website and read it pretty much verbatim. And my other guest is in television, and that was part of the reason why. And same with you, where it's there's just so much in your bio about who you are and what you've accomplished in a short span of time that I just didn't want to take it apart and leave things out. And you're doing so much. Like I remember when we first met, I'm like, okay, she's a salesperson at Glovebox. Really cool. And then we start talking and you're like, well, I'm a comedian. And I'm like, oh, awesome. That's really cool. And then as I learn more about you, you're also a founder and CEO of a startup company. So I was like, wow, this is, triple threat, as we would say in basketball. So I'm so excited to hear about your story and how you got started, what inspired what, right? Like which one came first for you? I'd love for you to just dig in.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I never know where to begin because, your story, as it were, is always like anytime I tell it, it feels a little bit different because everything's kind of like a bubble, but when
let's start here for you then. And I'll make it a little different for you. Tell me about your upbringing. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up?
So I was an only kid. My mom is crazy, funny, outlandish, and my dad is quiet, understated, and snarky. And so I had this like really nice upbringing with my parents, hung out with adults all the time, really close with my grandparents. And I grew up in Wisconsin, but lived in North Carolina for a little while. And my dad was in the Army Reserves. So my parents actually met in the Army. So I had a very, my family's always been pretty story driven. Like everybody has a story of how they met or a story of this or a story of that. My family's mixed, like we had talked about before the podcast. And so with all these different backgrounds and everything coming together, there's kind of an interesting thing when you're an only kid where you're like moving around a little bit and trying to figure out your own identity. And I found it just by being a weird little kid on my own, entertaining adults and finding stories. I found stories to be very fascinating. And that's kind of what drove our family's togetherness too.
So you would be kind of like the kid that all the grandparents and aunts and uncles would gather around and just listen to for a good 5 or 10 minutes as you just shared a
Oh
story and
yeah.
made everyone laugh.
Yeah. Stories or jokes. I mean, I used to tell jokes. Couldn't even remember the jokes I used to tell as a kid, obviously, because my brain's too full of recent ones. But
Sure.
um, yeah, I used to entertain a lot. And then that kind of just translated into high school. I was a cool kid, but I wasn't part of like a clique. I was
Mhm.
always bopping around between groups of people. And again, kind of identifying with everybody, but nobody at once for a little while when I was kind of on the younger side of high school and still just trying to find my way. And so I started journaling like funny things that would happen and quotes and these little memo books, and they became Natasha's books of thought. And I started performing those for people in high school, older kids. I would get invited to parties to like read the weird shit that I was writing in my books. And so it kind of like forayed into actually being like somebody that people were like, oh, you should have her around. She's funny, she's fun, she's chill, and like she'll entertain everybody, laugh, you know. So that kind of was, I think, a big catalyst into making me be like, oh, there's something here. You know, this stories and this poignant sense of humor is like valuable to people.
Yeah, and when you were doing that, it's funny. My wife and I were watching this show on net or this movie on Netflix. It turns into a show for us because we can't watch a movie all in one shot because of the kids and bedtime and all that other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So we watch it like half-hour clips. So it's actually a movie, and it's called, I think, Lord of Metal. But anyway, I bring it up because I'm just picturing this. Scene from the movie where it's like this house party's happening and they have the whole band set up and everything, and I'm going, that doesn't really happen in real life, but I guess for you it kind of did. So when you would go to house parties or friends parties, they would make space for you and you would pretty much perform for them. Is that
Yeah, it wouldn't even be like a formal thing. It would be kind of like a bonfire or the back of a truck, you know, somebody's truck bed. We'd
right?
all be drinking in a cornfield, and they'd be like, Natasha, get your books out. I'd be like, okay. Like we would shotgun a beer and like I'd tell some little funny one-liners and they'd be like, that's fucking awesome. And then everybody just keep drinking, and it was just fun.
But with what you're explaining, that doesn't come natural to everybody. In so in public speaking, everybody's got a story, and I teach public speaking, and everybody's got a story, and everybody has
Yes.
something they want to share with people, but they're afraid to get up. They're afraid to stand up and speak. They're afraid to stand up on the truck bed and
Yep.
share their thoughts. I'd like to go into in that high. I mean, you're in high school. This is like the peak of judgment in our minds, right?
Mm-hmm.
What gave you the courage to be able to do that, to be able to stand up and perform?
I didn't mind being weird, and I didn't mind being misunderstood. And so I think, I always had, as I kind of came into my own in high school, I was not only doing these like comedic things, but I was also a straight A student. So people respected me for my mind and my work ethic. They also
Mm.
respected me for my sense of humor. And I was also known for showing up in quite lavish ensembles. So I was like stylishly outlandish and and then like funny and like a cute girl and good friends with the boys, good friends with the girls. And I was smart. And so I had a lot of things kind of going that I didn't even recognize at the time. And so I ended up it's funny that you say the public speaking thing, because I don't think I've talked about this on any of the lots of podcasts I've done. I had to take a public speaking class my sophomore year of high school. Um, and it was just part of our curriculum. We had to do it. And the first day, it was my teacher, Trish Shoemate. She's still a really good friend. We talk all the time. I have a handful of teachers that I still talk to regularly. One was at my special taping, actually. um, so she introduced the first day of class by making people come in and lip sync to Burnin' Ring of Fire. Um, and like, I fell into a burning ring of fire.
Yeah,
And
Johnny
she needed
Cash.
a volunteer to do it first. And I did it, and I like performed the crap out of it, and this like danced around the room. It was just, living it up. And it like really set the tone for the class. And so I essentially would be, for every speech assignment, the first person that would get up and like ease the room. I didn't care if I failed or stumbled. That class actually really helped me learn to not use filler words when I'm speaking in public. It was really vital at that time in my life, because otherwise it would have been really easy to move into college and be a like kind of girl. But it helped me to avoid that. Then I ended up becoming her TA for that class. So I continued to be the sample speech person for 2 classes below me for the next 2 years.
That what you said there was, I didn't care if I failed or stumbled, I think is the thing with, I think that's the issue that most people encounter when public speaking or doing stand-up or anything, is that they care. They're afraid that they're going to fail. And it's like, you know what? It's okay if you fail. It's really okay. Like, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. They move on.
They don't.
They move on to the next thing.
Well, the easy thing you can do, even in comedy or whatever it is call yourself out. If something's not working and you can you notice it, then people aren't like, oh, this unaware person just stumbled and didn't recognize it. Like, give it levity, and then it's like the failure becomes a learning experience. Everybody's okay.
I like that you said that too, because in public speaking, we think that we can't address that. So when we're doing a speech, when we're doing a keynote or anything like that, we feel that we have to stick to the script and we can't address that. And I love that part of comedy. I tried stand-up comedy. I thought that was going to be my path at one point. I used to listen to Opie and Anthony a lot. And so I was inspired by a lot of their guests, a lot of their comedian guests. And I learned that from them, was that call yourself out, and I do that in my public speaking. And sometimes I'm like, wait a second, did I just say that? Like, wait a second, everyone, that's wrong. Like, everything I just said was backwards. Sorry, I'm dyslexic.
It happens. Yeah. I mean, we're human.
It does.
And that's, when you epitomize something into speech, especially in a podcast, it can be kind of scary. Because I had a podcast for like 3.5 years. It's on hiatus right now, but you mess up, you say things, you're a person. It's okay. We got to give each other grace for that. And it's actually just makes you more human and relatable anyway. So. Right.
Yeah. And I like that you said it's on hiatus right now, because podcasting is hard. In 3 years, don't knock yourself for that. My goodness. Like, I'm only a year in and I'm like, wow, this is for real. I want to touch on a few things that you just mentioned before we move on. So there's a couple things that you did that I think our listeners can learn from in your story so far. Is you did journaling. You made notes of the things that you thought were great ideas from yourself. You journaled them, your daily activities, some stories that you came across. You put them in a journal, you put them in a place. I speak about this a lot on my lives, about journaling, about putting your ideas down on paper, whether it be a pen and paper or, in your iPad or wherever it goes, right? But putting it somewhere to where you can go back and revisit that. Some of the other things that you did or that you did but didn't know, I think affected you in a positive way, were you were an avid learner, so you were smart. So you were able to do well in school, which garnered respect. You were also very stylish. So that another thing about your own self-image, which all led to, I believe, great confidence, which is how we're able to perform, right? Is knowing that you have the respect from your audience. You know that you have the respect from your classmates, your friends, your family. And now you get up and you're like, these people love me, right?
Yeah, it was like it was never for me about attention or cockiness.
Right.
Like, I think that can be a misconstrued idea with people that are, a comedian especially, or somebody that's in entertainment, but it was more like you get to relate to people through these different avenues. Like, you get to relate to people with the way you think, with the way you have a sense of humor, with the way you dress. Like, there's certain things that really tell a lot about your story before people even, you have a couple seconds to make a snap judgment on somebody. What are they gonna take away from you? And so I think those things are pretty what is the word I'm looking for? Like, they affect you.
Yeah, and it's good to have a positive self-image, and like you said, not cocky. Obviously, we all border that line of overconfidence, which is no, we don't want to be there, but we want to be confident. Yeah. We want to believe in ourselves. We want to have a positive self-image. And when we think about entrepreneurship, which now we're kind of digging into a little bit on the comedy side, but we're definitely going to get to the registry side. But when you think about that positive self-image is so important because there's so much failure around entrepreneurship that you really have to believe in yourself. And that's what leads to other
Yeah.
people believing in you, is that self-belief. So let's go through the next part of this journey in stand-up, right? Which is
Yeah.
you're doing all this for high school, you're having fun, you're doing it as a fun thing. And then now I'm assuming you're starting to learn about stand-up gigs that you can actually get paid for and start
Not
turning this
yet.
into an
Not
income.
yet. I actually didn't know about any of that yet. So it was actually, I never actually thought about doing stand up in high school. I didn't really think it was a thing. There weren't any clubs really close to me. They were kind of, but they were, 21 plus, or maybe they were 18 plus. I wasn't infused in that world at all. I watched comedic geniuses like Lucille Ball and Mary Tyler Moore, and I loved that. Um, but as far as just solo performance, I never considered it. And I got to college and I was pre-med, but I knew I was really interested in theater. Yeah, I was going to get my doctorate. And
For the listeners, I just made a face like, wait, you were pre-med? And so
yeah, I was
Natasha
pre-med.
just jumped on that.
I was pre-med national honors and was going to I couldn't decide, but I really wanted to be a brain surgeon. So I was doing a double major in pre-med and psychology. I was really fascinated by the mind and in various aspects. And then I was minoring in theater, and I was also a dancer my whole life. So I was like, oh, I'll do theater. Like, that seems like a nice balance because I think it's going to be a lot for school. I had like 22 credits my first semester, or something kind of heavy. And I noticed that theater was really drawing me in. Not in a sense where I wanted to be a theater kid. I ended up kind of making fun of the theater kids, like, because there was just too much like seriousness in there. I was like, you guys take yourself way too serious. You're pretending to be a tree right now in a warm up. Like, what are you doing? And so I started doing solo performances in theater class, or speeches that were comedic. I did a presentation on Shakespeare that was so fucking funny. I wish I had it recorded. And then I wrote a Shakespearean rap. It was Hamlet, but redone like Eminem and Dr. Dre's Guilty Conscience, and performed it with a friend of mine. And we like redid Hamlet like a rap opera. And then I did a solo performance, like embodying the character of my grandma and her twin making Christmas cookies. And like, I was kind of coming into my own as this very standout performer that nobody else was really doing things like. People always would want to come to see my performances in theater class. They were like, we don't know what she's going to come up with. Is it going to be a rap? Is it going to be some comedy? Is it going to be a Shakespeare speech or whatever? So I went home one day after one of my teachers told me I should look into improv, because they were like, you just can fly with shit. You can just roll with it. You have no fear. And I went home and to my dorm and Googled improv, and I found Second City, Chicago. That was the end.
And that's in
Of
06,
college.
right? That you found that?
It was 05, because it was 2 years into my college days. I was deep in pre-med, killing it. And I was like, I got to go explore this. So I went home to Wisconsin I was in school in Minneapolis. I went home to Wisconsin for a like 10-month period, worked at an Applebee's, saved up as much money as I could, cash. And I moved to Chicago and found a little studio apartment and just had a shitty laptop and a blow up mattress, and started going to Second City on Sundays and training.
And so Second City is a nightclub in Chicago. Is that right?
Second City is an improv and sketch training ground that breeds
Okay.
SNL writers and performers, essentially.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so in there, you were saying you started learning the ropes of entertainment and the entertainment business. What were some of the things that you learned there in that experience, outside of obviously performing?
It was the most valuable, honestly, experience of my life. I was young. I was like 21 when I was exploring improv for the first time. And I was the youngest in my class. I think there might have been one girl younger than me for a little while, but there was, in a training ground, there's people that are just dabbling and people that are really serious about something. So we had everything from like young people that are really interested in comedy to like older attorney dads that were like, I just want to try this and go have fun, and like just paying for classes.
That's
And yeah, so it was a whole mix of people, and it was entertaining. You know, you start out in these lower tiers of improv where you're like playing games, just like easy, quick games, like whose line is it anyway kind of stuff.
Right.
And anyone can kind of have their shining moment in that. So everybody would feel funny at some point. We'd go out for drinks afterwards and have $2 beer pitchers or whatever. And then, you know, they would show us these archives of Second City performers, people that were now on SNL or like John Candy or whoever was big, like huge names. So I was watching where I was and saying, oh my God, all these huge people came out of here. But I also saw them being a lot older now than in these archive videos. And one of my directors, I was always coming up with like really fun sketches, bizarre shit, like interesting characters. And one of my directors was like, you're raw talent, like you're going to go somewhere. And he's like, but prepare yourself because it's going to take 15 years to like get where you envision yourself. And think that was the best thing somebody ever said to me, because I was like, at a young age, I was like, ooh, you're going to have to think about this differently. You're not just going to be able to expect that somebody's going to hand you something and that it's going to fly and your career is going to be great. Like you've got to take some control over this. So that's where all the business savvy started to kick in.
Yeah, and that speaks to so much of the businesses that we see around us is people think like overnight success. And we see these businesses, they took years to develop these founders. They go through different accelerator programs, different business schools, and they don't just launch Amazon overnight. Amazon was a book company that failed, and we see so much of that around us, and we think that these people just show up, and we know that it takes a long time. So he said it was going to take you 15 years, and I've heard that, especially in the stand-up world, but I've also heard that in just other things in life. Yeah, 10 years is usually like put in your time. I forget what the
You're
rule is.
respected. You're looked at like a, with anybody, no matter what arena they're working in, you really just want to be respected by your peers. You could give two shits about what passersby think.
Right.
But your peers, the people that you work around all the time, those are the people that you're really like. In comedy, I'm vying for the respect of other comedians.
Right.
I'm not vying for the respect of the audience. I want them to be entertained because that's my job. But I'm not like, I wouldn't walk out of a show and be like, hey, what did you think about my set? Like, I don't care about their opinion of my work. I just want them to be entertained. Where I go to other comedians and value their opinion, and we have like those kind of deeper level discussions about like how we can improve and things like that.
And more feedback.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just kind of became a thing, I would say, as I was hitting year 10, which is around when I filmed my comedy special or was gearing up for it in stand-up. I was like, yeah, this is a good time to do this because I've hustled, I've put out so much work. I mean, over the years that I was in LA for 10 years and I'm back in Chicago now. But I had started a production company, started a second production company, filmed and shot and produced and funded all of my own projects, or co-produced or co-funded them with my friends on our credit cards, hustling, working various jobs, bartending at a young age, just making content that we thought was good, submitting to film festivals, submitting to writing festivals, pitch festivals. I had won and been selected at like 20 different festivals over the years, and won a lot of grace with some of the major networks. I was on holding deals. I was on shopping deals. Like I've been through the fucking ringer.
And I think your comedy special that is the most popular one for you at this moment. I'm just teasing it for a second here. That leads into your other business. So I think it would be great if you could share a little bit of that story of the one that is about your breakup. which is on Amazon Prime, everyone. So you can find her there, and PH Comedy on Amazon Prime. Pretty cool. So I think if you could share a little bit about that, because I think that goes into the business that you started, mybreakupregistry.com. So yeah, give us a little taste.
It's super interesting because so when I moved to LA, it was 2011. I'd been doing stand-up for about a year and a half. I'd been doing improv sketch for like 4.5, 5 years at that point. I was 26. I'm 37 now. So time, what is time? But so when I moved to LA, I started a relationship with somebody I'd been friends with for a long time. We had a very natural cadence and we were very, very close, and we ended up dating. We were together for 7.5, 8 years before we got engaged. I was 32 when we got engaged, and we started to hit some massive growing pains. Like we had started dating at just a young age, and so there was a lot of changing, shifting, kind of growing apart. Lots of respect for each other still, but it was just happening, and it was happening while we were engaged. So it was really weird because we finally had like the commitment, but we're further apart than ever before. So leading up to our first wedding date, we had canceled it, and then we rescheduled it a year later. We were like, we can work through this. Like we'll feel better in about a year. So they moved the date for us at the venue. We were coming up on that and still not feeling it. And so we had already sent out save the dates, but that was it. We didn't send out any information. So people were literally like coming up on 2 months out from the wedding date, and they were like, what are we doing? What's happening? My maid of honor had only planned my bachelorette party, and that's it. Like we had already done that right away. And so I was like, well, I'm at about 10 years of doing stand-up at this point, 15 years of, 14 years of comedy. Like I better do my first comedy special on my canceled wedding day and just call it I Was Supposed to Get Married Today. It served a number of purposes. One, it was a piece of art that I thought could help some people that were also struggling. Two, I thought it was pretty fun and poignant to be able to be a woman who was uncertain about marriage and not making it about the guy sucking. Like I didn't make my special about like bashing men. It was very family driven and my own, like, being in my own head about certain things. And also it made me able to negotiate the contract for the venue I would have had to pay for anyway for a canceled wedding. I negotiated it down by like a third by doing my special on that day instead, and paid for the whole thing up front and sold it out with ticket sales. I made my tickets like $45 or like 120 for two people or whatever I packaged them as. Sold it out. Everybody knew they were supporting the filming of my special, and like to the dollar made how much it cost me to film it on tickets.
Wow. I mean, everybody in business today talks about pivoting. That is like such a beautiful story on pivoting, on like, here's where what we were supposed to do, and we're totally changing the game, but we're using, like I always talk about when pivoting, I'm like, pivoting isn't just about like burning the bridge and starting over again. It's about taking what you've learned or taking some of what is there and repurposing it and using it. And that's kind of like what you did there. You took the date, you took the venue, you took the invitations, and you repurposed it to make it your special. I love the part in your special where you say, the maitre d', somebody came up to you and said, hey, we're going to treat you like a princess today. And you're like, well, what if I don't want to be treated like a princess?
Right? They just assume that it's like they kind of plug and play all these women into a certain role. And I was literally like, I'm kind of a tomboy. Like, you don't know nothing about me. What if I want to like play pool and smoke a cigar in a white jumpsuit? Like, which is what I would have preferred. So
I have two questions for you before we go into the registry. One, was that really your wedding dress in the special?
No.
Okay.
So right. I hadn't bought a wedding dress. I was planning to get married in a white jumpsuit. So okay. I'm a big jumpsuit queen. Like I love good pants. And so I was looking to get something like tailored and made. And then obviously I didn't do that. So I bought the white jumpsuit for the special and bought the dress for the special, the one that's in the beginning.
Yes.
So,
Okay. And then
it was at Ross Dress for Less for $20. I was like, that looks like a wedding dress that I can trash. And I just totally threw it away afterwards.
And the other one is totally off topic. It's just to wrap up the comedy version portion of this podcast as we go into your businesses here. I was going through your Instagram because you just have like an awesome Instagram full of all of your different comedy specials, and you've played at some really cool places. One that I think Joe Rogan has made really famous, the Comedy Store in LA. So you've done a couple gigs there, or I don't know how many.
I used to play there all the time because I was in LA for 10 years.
And Joe Rogan talks about it all the time. So I saw those and I was like, well, I got to watch these. I mean, she's at the Comedy Store. Like this is New York's version of the Comedy Cellar, right?
Yeah.
So those are pretty cool. So the one that had me laughing this morning, and I actually showed my daughters, and my daughters are young, but I thought that this was pretty funny. Yeah, it was. Well, I'm not going to ruin it for you, but I just want to know, do you wash your feet now?
Oh yeah. that one's family friendly.
So go ahead, share that with our audience.
So that actually was brand new. So I was actually playing at Laugh Factory in LA like a week and a half ago. And I had just written that because I had written this. I'm working on my next hour. And I had written this long kind of 4 or 5 minute piece about working on yourself, getting out of a long-term relationship, thinking you're good, but working on yourself in a pandemic, but really you're just being alone. Like, you don't know if you're doing work on yourself when nobody's around to tell you you're like a piece of trash, like, so it's like kind of just making fun of myself and like my growth curve, and then relearning things about myself in a new relationship, which I'm in now. So within that actually had happened recently where I was showering with my boyfriend and he was like, you're not scrubbing your feet. You gotta scrub your feet more. And I obviously do wash them, but the funny thing happened and he's a comedian too. And so we were joking about it while it was happening. And I was like, oh, that's actually a good anecdote within this little storyline. Because it's funny, the idea that I'm learning about how to be an adult again after a long-term relationship, and I'm comparing it to washing my feet. So I cut that little clip out from my set at Laugh Factory and just put that up because I thought like that's pretty relatable and easy digestible in this day's like quick scannable market of TikToks and whatnot. So
yeah, wow, I didn't even think about it that much further. I love how you just broke that down for us, and for me, like that's so cool because it's like I did think about, I'm not going to lie, I did show it to my daughters. I was like, look who I'm interviewing today. Like, because they always ask, they're actually really interested. Like, my youngest, she's turning 5 next week, Tenley, and she's so into acting and singing, and she's always doing different things.
Yes.
And my oldest, Denise, is more of an introvert, but she also does these, like, she watches a lot of YouTube videos, so she acts them out and does them and holds the camera and makes believe like she's talking to camera and everything. So whenever I have a guest that's in that kind of genre or whatever, I tell them about it because they're interested. So I was showing them some pictures and videos and that one I showed them, and I was like, you see, you better wash your feet, girls.
Yeah, and it's funny with social media because you'll put stuff out that's like a 30-second clip or a 1-minute clip, kind of whatever the platform can handle. And it's just a piece. It's like a sliver of what you're talking about. And people will like either love it or they'll just dissect it. And you're like, you need to come see a whole show. Like you can't judge somebody's stand-up off of a 1 minute, So it's pretty interesting, like how people gobble up content now,
I'm not gonna lie. I really don't go on social media at all. I have a social media manager for that.
Healthy.
Right, it's healthy, but wait, there's a little unhealthy piece, which is TikTok. I do enjoy TikTok, but you know what I really like about TikTok is that it feeds you what you watch. So I watch a lot of comedians. I love stand-up, so I watch a lot of stand-up. So I need to start following you on TikTok. That's like job number 1 after this. So I watch a lot of comedians. I watch a lot about public speaking. I watch a lot about inspiration and businesses and all that stuff. So the good thing is like that's what I get fed. And then there's of course the garbage that they put in there that you're just like, wait a second, I gotta watch this. But I do notice my attention span stinks now because I used to be a big YouTube watcher where I would watch like long form 10, 20-minute videos. And now I'm like, unless I'm really invested in that video, it's tough for me sometimes. I want to jump
Yeah.
into your breakup registry. So it's actually called mybreakupregistry.com. And
Yeah.
obviously it's inspired through the breakup. And
Mhm.
I mean, this is kind of like a tech company meets shopping company. So share a little bit about that and that journey to establishing it.
Yeah, so I had very thoughtfully, over the years as I kind of built the business side of my comedy career, I knew I liked to tour. I didn't like the kind of junky lifestyle that younger comedians are kind of known for, like sleeping on floors and like shitty apartments. I didn't want to live that life.
Air
So
mattress.
yeah, I mean, of course, in my early days, I had to, but I always hustled so I could like live nicer,
Right.
or just try. I like to travel nice. So I started learning about hotel partnerships back in the day, and working with hotels and different brands to really craft and curate my tours in a way where things were really inexpensive or free in exchange for content, social media mentions, things like that. And so I got really crafty with my brand partnerships even before TikTok was even a thing, just on Instagram as I was growing my following years ago. And I started working with a lot of startups, apps, travel brands that were looking for notoriety and like would, just work with them on my tours. And that way I could tour to cities I wanted to go to, catch up with friends I wanted to see, perform at the clubs I wanted to, and stay at the hotels I wanted to stay at and have like a nice experience. There was more work involved, but it was like a better quality of existing and traveling. So I had done that for years, and I had launched my own Vegas residency. Like one day I just decided I want to have a Vegas show. And I like called a hotel and was like talking to the GM, and I was just like, hey, I want to do this thing. And we started working it out, and I got all these sponsors in because I'd worked with all these brands and platforms for so long, liquor, whatever. So I had a weekly Vegas show in LA that I like commuted for like 8, 9 months every week. And so I had really gotten into that kind of startup app, platform kind of space. So cut to when I shot my comedy special, I knew I had wanted to probably launch a company at some point that was different than what I'd done before. And then we ended up splitting, me and my ex-fiance. And I talked about this in my stand-up, but the night we broke up, I was sending my wedding registry out to everybody still with my name on it and registering for the items that I was losing breaking up. And my friends thought it was really funny. And I was like, this is like a good business plan, and or a good business idea. So it was just an idea at that point. That was January of 2020. And I'm thinking, when am I going to have time to work on something like this? Little did I know around the corner was a pandemic and a shutdown. So I had talked to a couple business friends that I really trusted that are just really smart, really sharp, really connected. And they were like, this is fucking genius. You've got to do it. So when the pandemic hit and touring completely went nil, I hustled and made it happen. I did a ton of research. I met with a ton of developers, had this whole thing built, and launched in 2021. I actually just got emailed my corp documents. I transferred from LLC to a Delaware C Corp. So I'm fundable now. Um, and last night in Denver, I just found out, I can't say what, but I just found out I just booked a series later this year that highlights entrepreneurs in my business, and I are going to be highlighted.
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's so great listening to this story coming from you right now. We met. You're, as I said, I mean, you call yourself a glove box guru. Glove Box is one of the companies you work for, I guess, right? You're a salesperson
Mm-hmm.
there, or consultant, however, whatever the terminology is these days,
Yeah.
right? But the point is that I'm getting at is not judging a book by its cover. Is that you and I met, And I always talk about this with my salespeople and with my team is get to know somebody beyond the sale, get to know somebody
Yeah,
beyond what you're doing, right? Just spend time with them. And that's what you and I did with each other was you were helping me with Glovebox for my company and I'm learning about Glovebox and whatever we're talking and we just kind of got to know each other. I said, so what do I think it was you were in a hotel and I was like, oh, what are you doing in a hotel? Like, what do you have, an insurance conference? And you're like, no, I'm a stand-up comic. And so anyway, where I'm really going with this is from there, somebody might say, okay, cool, so she's a stand-up comic and Glovebox, and then that's it, end of story. But as you just described how you started my excuse me, I want to make sure I get it right, my breakupregistry.com, there's so much more to you and there's so much more that people can learn from people like you where you're a stand-up comic and there's a ton in that world to learn, and as you just showed us on breaking down a joke and how it can have all these different meanings. But then right now what you just spoke about was one, you manifested something, you thought of an idea, one with the Vegas show where you were just like, hey, what if I just want my own Vegas show? Let me just make a call. So something that people in business and life don't do is take action. They have a great idea, but then they don't do anything about it. And so
best book. Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you finish. Go ahead.
Best book that actually made me want to take action on my ideas was Big Magic. Have you ever read that?
I have not, but it's
by Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. I didn't read Eat, Pray, Love. I just skipped over to Big Magic, her next book. But essentially she talks about how ideas come and go. And if you're not a person that manifests an idea, it will find a new host. And that's not a negative thing. It's just finding its way into the world. So you can't look at it like, oh, somebody did this and I should have done it. Like, no, it just found the right outlet. It's also why you don't look at people as competition if they have similar ideas, because that's what makes uniting with people and sharing ideas so powerful. Because you might have an idea, I might have an idea, they're very similar, and we can have cohesion here. So there's something really cool about that. There's something really freeing about that mentality that like you either choose to make something real or you choose to allow it to find a home through somebody else. And this was the one idea that I'd had where I was like, I can't allow this to find its home through somebody else. This has to be something I put into the world because it makes sense to do.
Yeah, and you also work really hard for it too. And you just mentioned that about collaborating. So you've been collaborating, and so the resources that you reached out to, the only reason why they thought it was an awesome idea was because they knew you'd put the work behind it and hustle for it. Because there's so many people that have great ideas and they bring it up to experts like, the friends that you have around you. And they say, well, that's a good idea, but maybe you should stick with what you're doing. And it's usually not because that person doesn't have a good idea. It's because they're like, do you realize the work that you're going to have to do to do it?
Yeah. And right? you don't even know the extent of the work until you're in it. And once you're in it, you can't not do the work because then it's just going to all be for nothing. So you have to even just like watching the trajectory here at Glovebox, for example, and I can always talk about how I ended up over here too. But watching what my CEO here has to do, like I understand it on a smaller scale because my business is not this level. But I know what kind of work that is, the kind of mental challenges and how hard it is to run a team and operate and think about all these moving pieces. I mean, business is no joke. It's tough.
There's a lot to it. Actually, it's funny. I was just writing about that this morning. So right now I've dedicated to going live for 30 days on Instagram. And so every morning I want to put out a business tip. And what I wrote about this morning was finding your why, your reason for starting a business. And what relates to what we're talking about right now is my sister-in-law is an entrepreneur as well. And she's actually a successful one who ended up selling her business for a profit. And when I said I wanted to start my own insurance agency, she was like, she looked at me like, why do you want to do that? But not in a way of like, like she wasn't like inquisitive. She was more of like, what are you doing to yourself? And at the time, I didn't understand why she was asking me it that way. And now that I'm in it, I'm like, now I get it. Now I know why, because there's so much more to it. In my registry, in my breakupregistry.com, so that's an app. And how did you go about developing the app? How did you go about finding a way to the right people and all that other stuff that goes into building an app?
Yeah, I actually didn't go the app route. I went platform, so mobile web and web app.
Okay.
So mobile, it's a web app, so it's
So it's
functional
like
on
my glove
mobile
box
and
then.
yeah, I mean, but Glovebox also has an app. I don't have a
Oh, okay.
downloadable app yet. Yeah,
Okay.
so but mine's web based, mobile compatible.
Okay.
So I didn't know the first thing about finding developers. Like that was a hard process, and there's nothing more expensive than development for good reason. It's really hard. Like it's like the Matrix, you know, when you see it's like the inside of how something is built. It's not just like a basic ass website. For a lot of these websites there's so many connections in the back, so it's all these like metaphorical wires that need to be connected and can be easily broken if something is off by like a piece of code or whatever it is. So I had looked into originally trying to figure out how to build this thing on my own. I had obviously built like basic websites through like Wix or WordPress, but this site needed to be able to be e-commerce style, functioning, shoppable, connective, be able to create somebody's shopping cart properly, connect people's bank accounts for crowdfunding. So I couldn't mess it up. So I interviewed like 20 different development teams. Some were overseas and they were like really inexpensive, but I knew the communication across would be a challenge, like especially time zone differences and stuff. And I really wanted to go US based, and I really wanted to find a team that I felt really stood for something that I believed in as far as who they are as people and what their company culture is. So, and then I had teams that would pitch me 180,000 to build this thing that were like in the US. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like I can't do that. You know, I'm paying for this myself. So I found this team in Brooklyn, literally just like gelled with them. They uh, built their dev team to be able to work with founders in a reasonable capacity with really quick timelines and turnarounds, payment plans, and be able to build it so that when you do have a dev team, eventually it can be like picked up and handed over to that new dev team really easily without having to break all the connections and rebuild everything. So I loved what they stood for, and they built my platform for me over the course. We mapped it out for over the course of a couple months, the user experience, which is hard to go through. Like putting yourself in a user's shoes is like pretty crazy because you really have to think through like, how is this person going to experience what I'm building? Is it going to suck for them? Are they going to? So ended up launching it. They built it within a month, and then we launched it. And that kind of is what led me into finding Glovebox.
Wow. It's quite a process. So I'm currently working with a developer as well for because I part of my vision for my insurance company is to be completely digital as well and to have our own
We
platforms
talked about
really.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, to have our own platform. So I'm working with a dev team right now, and it's really in depth. To your point, it's
Hmm.
almost exhausting. Like when I see the meeting on my calendar, I'm just like, all right, we got work. Like I got the next hour is going to be a lot of work. So that led you to Glovebox, which is where you are
Hmm.
today, which is an awesome company. I work with you guys. I love you guys.
Yeah.
Um, but I know that you have, with a multitude of things to do, have other things to get to now in Denver today. So I want to just touch on your mantra and what you live by, and how that can help all of our entrepreneurs and business leaders that are listening today to your stories. What I love about this meeting today is that you didn't just have one story that we went off of and learned from. You have like four different life paths
I know,
that
like
you
timelines.
I know, like we need like a 4 hour episode together.
I know.
But you do have so many different life paths that all have different learning in them, and but all come back to our audience here. And so your mantra, which I love, is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes. I love that saying. And it really truly is, you know, it's something that makes you magnetic as a person. I notice this about other people as well. If you enter every situation as if it is important, have integrity, be curious, changes your life. Like you said, you and I wouldn't be sitting here right now if we hadn't been curious about one another. But in every interaction you get, it's not that there's something to be gained. It's not like you should look for interactions to like get something from them, but there's something to learn, and you never know what those connections are going to do for you or for somebody else down the line. And so even this kind of mentality played into when I was in like the service industry. I didn't love, waitressing on a rooftop when I first moved to LA, but because I did it with such intense, like, good attitude and integrity, my owners like immediately bumped me up to like running events at this rooftop. So like everything I've ever done because of my attitude about it, I've been bumped up to a point where I was like, oh, I guess people look at me to lead things, which is pretty cool. And that's because even if it's a job I don't really want to be doing, I know I'm doing it right now, so I've got to do it well, you know?
I love that. And also you're just like, I could just based off of every story that you've told us so far, you're like 110% in on anything you do. There is like no, like, I mean, I don't know where you came from today, but this is a podcast and you're dressed like for live TV right now. And so I love you're just like 100% in, you're always showing up. I really love
Always
that
be
about
looking
you.
sharp. I got my
Yes, you look sharp. That's right. Nice shoes. Yes, very, very sharp. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been so awesome. I am doing a live show once a month. So if you're ever in the New York area and want to do a spot, you have an open door
Yes.
with us.
Oh my
So
God. Yes. I would love that.
that would be awesome to have you on. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been awesome.
Thank you for
All right.
having me. This was really lovely.